Dear learners, greetings of the day. I, Mohini Rasad, would like to take you through this session on Introduction to Wines. The objectives of the session are to understand definition of wine, to know viticulture and its importance, to learn about parts of grapes, to know principal grape varieties used in wine making, and to understand types of wines. Before we move towards the session, let me give you a brief history about wines. Wine is certainly the oldest and most appreciated beverage in the world. Archaeologically, evidence shows existence of wines over the last 7,000 years, mainly in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. In countries like Georgia and Armenia, there has been a discovery of wineries which trace back to 5000 BC. The beginning of modern wine industry can be traced back to between 2000 and 3000 BC to Greek and Roman civilization. Well, if the Greeks started rolling the ball, the Romans gave a good kick down the road. As Romans marched and built civilizations in Europe, they got the industry of olive oil and wine with them. Talking about wines, these old world countries, which include Spain, France, Germany, Italy, owe a lot of their history of wine production and love of wines to the Romans. Moving ahead with the session, let's understand what is wine. Wine can be defined as an alcoholic beverage obtained from fermented grape juice. The grapes are crushed to release their sweet juices, which is fermented to produce wine. Now, let's understand fermentation. In high school, we all have done experimental fermentation in science, and the same principle or application is utilized in production of wines. For fermentation, two major elements required are yeast and sugar. Now, what exactly is yeast? Yeast is a microscopic organism which feeds on sugar present in the grape juice, and as the result, byproducts produced are ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. To have at least 12% of alcohol in a wine, 24 grams of sugar is required in the grape juice. In case of a less sugar present naturally in the grape juice, addition of sugar is allowed by the law in certain wine producing regions. And this particular step of addition of sugar is known as chaptalization. Now, let's understand how is alcohol measured. Level of alcohol present in the wine is denoted by ABV. It stands for alcohol by volume. For example, if the wine label reads 10% ABV, it means 10% of that liquid is alcohol. Now let's talk about something called as viticulture. As we know by now that wines are produced from grapes, it makes grapes as a star of the product. To understand, it is a quite easy equation. When the grapes that are produced are good, the end product, that is wine, will be good. If the grapes are rotten or are bad, the product is going to be bad. Almost every wine manufacturer believes in viticulture. And why so? Because viticulture has been existing since the time wines have been existing. With time and study involved, it has now become a branch of horticulture altogether. Viticulture is the scientific study about growth and production of grapes. A grape plant is known as vine, and the farm is known as vineyard. Viticulture is essential to take care and maintenance of grape climbers so that the fruit, that is the grapes, can get enough sunlight, which is essential for ripening of the grapes and also is further attached to the sugar content that is utilized for further production of wines. Viticulture also helps with understanding other elements of the growth like type of the soil that is required, nutrients of the soil, amount of water that is required for the plant, and so on. Hence, viticulture plays a vital role in the production of wines, or rather, is the foundation or the base required to produce a good quality wine. Moving ahead, let's talk about parts of grapes. There are two primary grape varieties: white grapes, also referred as green grapes, black grapes, also referred as red grapes. The fruit of the grape is known as a berry, which is attached to a stalk or stem. The essential parts of the berry include the skin, pulp, and seeds. Now let's understand the function of each part of the grape. Depending on type of the grape, skin of the grape includes red or yellow pigments which are further utilized in giving the color to the wine. It also has tannins and other minerals. Underneath the skin lies the flesh or pulp which makes up most of the berry volume and is gently crushed to release the sweet juices, often referred as free run. Coming to the parts of seed. Seeds are also known as pips, and seeds are located inside the flesh. It generally sums up to 2 to 4 seeds in a grape. These pips or seeds are rich in tannins, which are extracted during fermentation. Tannins provide texture and mouthfeel to wines. Moving ahead, let's take a look at the principal grape varieties which are used in production of white wines and red wines. As we mentioned earlier, two primary varieties, white varieties and black varieties. White varieties include of Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio, Riesling. Black varieties include Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Pinot Noir, Shiraz. Each of the grape variety have their own flavors and gives different notes to the wines. Moving ahead with the session, let's take a look at types of wines. Wines can be classified on the following aspects: nature of the wine, that includes still wine, sparkling wine, fortified wine, color, white, red, rosé. Looking at the color of wine, it is easier for a common person or a common man to understand, and hence we find this is a general classification known to a common man. Taste, dry, medium, and sweet. Moving ahead, let's take a look at the category of still wines. Still wines are the wines which do not contain any carbon dioxide. Let me relate it back to fermentation. As we know, fermentation, or rather byproducts of fermentation, include ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide. While making still wines, carbon dioxide, which is produced during fermentation, is allowed to be escaped in the atmosphere, making that wine a still wine. Alcoholic range of still wines is between 8% to 15% ABV. ABV stands for alcohol by volume. Many still wines are named after the region in which they are produced. For example, Sancerre and Burgundy from France. Now let's understand what are sparkling wines. Sparkling wines are the wines which have carbon dioxide present in the wine. Presence of carbon dioxide gives the wine a bubbly or a fizzy effect. The fizz is caused by carbon dioxide that is produced during fermentation and is allowed to be trapped in the wine. Very popular example of sparkling wine known to a common man is Champagne from France. We also have other countries producing sparkling wines. For example, Cava from Spain, Sumante from Italy. Sparkling wine is usually either white or rosé. Sparkling wines are also termed, or specifically champagne is also known for celebrations or a celebratory drink. Moving ahead to the next category of wines known as fortified wines. Fortified wines have extra alcohol added to them, making them stronger in alcoholic range. Alcoholic range for fortified wines is between 15% to 22% ABV. Because of the higher alcoholic range, fortified wines are also referred as heavy wines. Very popular examples of fortified wines include sherry, port, Malaga, Madeira, and Marsala. Now let's understand what are white wines. As the name implies, these wines are white in color. White wines can be produced using white or green grapes as well as red grapes. However, if the red grapes are utilized in production of white wine, a step of removing the skin, also known as de-skinning, is very important and has to be followed. Please understand, wines get the color from the skin because of the pigments that are present in the skin. And hence, to avoid any discoloration of a white wine, the skins have to be removed in the case of red grapes utilized. Looking at the picture, we can see that there are different shades of white wines which range from pale gold to deep gold depending on the variety and aging of the wine. Popular grape varieties, those are white varieties, are Chardonnay, Riesling, Pinot Grigio. Moving ahead, red wines. As the name suggests, these wines are red in color. Red wines are produced from red or black grapes. Please understand, it is all about the color and hence red grapes or black grapes are supposed to be utilized in production of red wines. While producing red wines, the skin has to be in touch or in contact with the grape juice as the pigment or the red pigment present in the skin gives the color to the wine. Shades of red wine ranges from pale ruby to deep ruby, and popular grape varieties, which are red varieties, include of Pinot Noir, Merlot, Shiraz. Moving to the next category, rosé wines. Imagine the color of a light pink rose. It is what one can expect to be the color of a rosé wine. But how exactly is rosé wine produced? A good quality rosé wines are produced by allowing red grape skins to remain in limited contact with the grape juice until the pink color is obtained. Please understand, the step of submerging skin is also referred as maceration and is only supposed to be for a limited time, as we do not want this rosé wine to turn into a red wine. Rosé wines are also referred as blush wines in USA. Different shades of rosé wines range from pale blush to deep salmon. Moving ahead, taste is a structural characteristic of a wine which relates to amount of sugar present in the wine post fermentation. Taste of wines are categorized as dry, medium sweet or medium, and sweet wines. Now let's understand what is a dry wine. These wines are dry as all the sugar present in the grape juice is converted to alcohol by the yeast during fermentation. Majority of white wines or most of the white wines fall under the category of dry wines. These wines are dry on our palate. Example, Chablis from France. Moving ahead to the category of medium wines. Most wines have medium level of sweetness, are either white or rosé. To create medium sweet wine, the winemaker stops fermentation intentionally before all the sugar is converted to alcohol by the yeast, making that wine not too dry nor too sweet. These wines are sweet in taste in comparison to dry wines. A popular example of medium wine is Riesling wine from Germany. Going to the next category of sweet wines. As the name implies, sweet wines are sweet in taste. The grapes utilized in production of sweet wines are excessively high in sugar. They're so high in sugar that even after fermentation, even after yeast stops acting on the sugar, it leaves a trace of residual sugar, making the wine sweet. Popular example is Sauternes from France and few fortified wines like port and few styles of sherry. Taking the popular example of sweet wine from France, I would like to explain a little bit on the grapes that are utilized in the production of this wine. Looking at the picture, the grapes in this picture are affected by a wind disease known as noble rot. Now, what exactly is a noble rot? Noble rot is a wind disease in which fungus punctures the grapes, evaporating all the water and concentrating all the sugars. Well, Sauternes in France utilize grapes affected by noble rot in production of their sweet wines. These wines are recognized globally. Before, in, Before we end with the session, let's take a multiple choice questions for a short revision. First question is, wine is fermented alcoholic beverage made from? Your choices are apple, grape, pear, none of the above. Well, definition of wine itself says wine is a fermented alcoholic beverage made from grape juice. So the answer is grape. Moving on to the next question. The scientific study of growing grapes is called as vinification, viticulture, horticulture, or agriculture. Well, the first two options might be a little confusing. However, vinification means wine making process and viticulture is the answer for your question. Hence, the scientific study of growing grapes is called as viticulture. The next question says, alcoholic range of still wines is between So the answer for this question is between 8 to 15%. Well, it cannot be as low as 4 to 8% because then it is not identified or termed as wine. And certainly, the next option that you see of 18 to 22% is not applicable for still wines, but it is the alcoholic range for fortified wines. Moving to the last question, fortified wines are termed as dash because of their higher alcoholic content. Well, I think the previous question should answer this. And as we see that fortified wines are higher in alcoholic content, the answer is heavy. Because of alcoholic content which is higher on site, fortified wines are termed as heavy wines. Students of AISSMS College of Hotel Management need to click on the link given in the description column below and attempt the quiz. Thank you. Happy learning.